What's going on YouTube? Got another video for you here today, and I just wanted to make a quick video trying to explain, quickly damage types. And if you're new to Path or you're coming over from Diablo, you see lots of different gems, and you'll see, reduced damage, less damage, increased damage, more damage, and so I just wanted to kind of do a quick recap. I've been having a lot of questions in my stream about how to increase damage and all sorts of stuff like that. And again, nothing in Path is simple, but I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, and so that you guys can have an idea of how to increase your damage and what to look for, and things like that. So if this is helpful, leave a like, subscribe, do all that, the whole shebang, and we'll get right into it. So to begin, you have basically two damage types, right? General damage types. And there are going to be exceptions to some of these things, and there's going to be things, but I want to go over kind of generally how you're going to increase damage on your build, right? So you have flat damages and you have percent increase damages, right? So flat obviously is the first thing that you need, because if you're adding percentages, if you're increasing by a percentage, but you have a very low flat amount, right? If you only have 5 of something and you increase it by 10%, right? That's not very much. But if you have 100 of something and you increase it by 10%, now that's a lot more substantial, right? So flat damages, percent damages. So you can look at something like this bow here, and you see that line adds 40 to 65 physical damage, right? That is a flat damage. That is where all the damage begins, right? So, and then as you start adding percentages, this is how you grow that number, right? It all starts with the flat damage. Okay, and then you have, something like if you come here to the bench now, you can craft on a percent base damage, right? So now you have increased physical damage, right? Plus you have flat damage, okay? You have those, they also exist in the tree, right? Like you have things like this where you can increase physical damage. You have it again here. You can increase physical damage, increase critical strike, things like that, right? So there are percentages to be increased upon. Okay, but you need to start with some flat, right? So I have a little example here, and again, I'm sure that you guys are going to light me up in the comments and tell me how wrong I am or whatever. And if that's the case, just let me know. If I'm explaining something incorrectly, then that means that I believe that it's incorrect. So by all means, correct me. So here we go. So again, if you have 5 flat damage, we'll say, right, and you increase that, this is increase, right? Because again, you have increase, decrease, and you have more and less, and they mean different things, right? So if we're talking about increase, right, and decrease, so if you have 5 damage, right, flat 5 damage, and you increase it by 100%, right, this is additive, right? We have here. So increase and reduced are additive, more and less are multiplicative, okay? So if we increase 5 flat damage by 100%, that's 5 damage, right? So you're going to add 5 to 5, you get 10, right? So you have 10 damage. Now, if you have 8 flat damage and you increase that by 50%, right? That's only 4, but now 8 plus 4 is 12, right? So even though it doesn't seem like a large number, 8 versus 5, right? And we're keeping the numbers low just because the math is difficult for me. So, but as you can see, there's a big difference there, right? So just from going up by 3 points and increasing by 50 versus 100, we still have more damage based on that, right? So it's important to get flat and percent based damages, right? Whether it be from the tree or from skill gems or things like that. And to kind of show you here, so if we look at this skill gem here, we have the first line in blue is skills deal 21% less projectile damage. But then if you go drop down to the bottom blue line, it says supported skills deal 10% increased projectile damage, right? So the top one is multiplicative, the bottom one is additive, right? So generally speaking, more and less, right? We're talking about more and less here, and you can see here this one has increase. The bottom line is increased projectile damage. The second from the bottom line is 11% more projectile damage, right? So those mean two different things and are applied differently. More becomes more powerful than increased once you have good increased, right? So if you want to start, you want good flat damage, then you want good increased damage, then you want good more damage. And more is where the build really starts to take off, but it doesn't take off until you have good increased and good flat, right? Does that make sense? It's almost, if you're coming over from Diablo, and this might upset some path players, it works almost like the buckets, right? Like where you have, your normal damage, and then you have vulnerability, and you have overkill, or is it overkill, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's similar to that, right? You want flat, you want increased, and you want more. You want all of them, right? And you want to try to spread it out. More becomes the greatest multiplier, but it doesn't multiply if you have it doesn't multiply by much if you have a very small number to begin with, right? So, and then again, sorry, it's early, we need coffee. So you have on skill gems, right? Some of them, this one here, like Tornado Shot, does not have any flat damage. But if you come over to something like Caustic Arrow of Poison, this provides you with flat damage, right? So that's another thing to keep an eye out for when you're looking for your build. Are you using something like Tornado Shot where you have to provide all of the damage for it to do anything? Or is it something like Caustic Arrow where you can just accentuate the damage that already exists, right? By trying to increase the amount of damage on the gem itself, right? By leveling it up or whatever the case may be, adding gem levels, stuff like that. Okay. So, and again, I hope this is somewhat. Again, it's. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but like I said before, nothing in Path is actually simple, right? So let's take a look here. And some of these resources, I tried pulling from all over the place, Reddit, all sorts of stuff like that, just so I could put it in writing and find it from people who are much smarter than I am. I just do this stuff. It just is in my head. So hopefully this all makes sense to some degree, right? So this dude here, if you have 10% increase plus 10% increase, that's 20% increased, right? So you would multiply the base number by 1.2. 10% more plus 10% more is you multiply the base number by 1.1, right? And then multiply that number by 1.1, effectively making it 1.21, right? And this isn't the most clear example. I figured this, at least the numbers are there, and then the next example down will make more sense, but this is essentially how it works. And then same thing with reduced and less, right? I haven't really gone too much into that because none of us want to reduce our damage, but like I said before, on this one here, on Waking GMP, you get extra projectiles, but you get 21% less projectile damage. So you're getting 5 more projectiles, but they do, 21% less damage is somewhat considerable, right? Like that's a decent amount of damage to drop. But, there is a trade-off there. So again, it works the same way with reduced and less. Less less hits you hard. Like the less damage multiplier hits you pretty hard. Oftentimes, right? Especially in end game. And then once you get to a certain breaking point, then it all kind of balances itself out once you have your build set up appropriately, right? So here's a better example that actually shows you that we can go into. So if you have 1,000 base damage, and this is from VPRG. If you have 1,000 base damage and 100% increased damage from your gear, right? So maybe that's whatever on your bows or whatever the case is. Maybe you have something like this on there where it's like, increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that we don't go over, but this is just kind of the basic idea, and hopefully this will get you guys going. So 100% increased damage from your gear, and you have 100% increased damage from passives in your tree, right? Like we saw where you can get the extra physical or chaos or whatever it is that you're using, right? So you need to make a choice between 2 support gems, right? So you have gem A, let's say, that's 100% increased damage. So your gear plus your passives, right? Again, that's 100 and 100 plus the gem, right? So 100 plus here, or 100 from here, 100 and then 100 here. That's 300% increased damage, right? You have 1,000 damage, 1,000 flat. We're considering that. So the math would be 1,000 times 1 plus 3, right? So that's 4. So that takes us to 4,000 damage, right? So 300% increase. Sounds like a lot, right? Now, you have Gem B, which provides 100% more damage. So again, gear passive, so you have 100% increased, 100% increased, and then 1,000 base damage, right? So the 200 coming from your gear and your passives, and then 100 more coming from the gem, right? So your math would be, let's pull this out so we can see it. So it would be 1,000 times 1 plus 2, right? So times 3, right? That this is coming from the increased damage. Now, right there, so what are you at? You're at 3,000, right? And now you're going to multiply that with your more damage modifier, right? So you're going to multiply 3,000 times 1 plus 1 is 2, which takes us to 6,000 damage, right? So as you can see, even though we had the same base damage from our gear here, in this particular case, the 100% more damage provides us with a considerable damage boost because it's it's multiplicative, it's not additive, right? So now, so as you can see, it makes a massive damage increase, right? And that's something to think about when you're looking through your gems, like with this right here, where we use GMP, right, because we want the extra projectiles, and then we use Fork so that we can, obviously we get more projectiles there as well, but this one is a drastic increase over something like, say Awaken Chain, and this is too much for you guys, then, we'll keep moving. But Awaken Chain, which, you're going to you're going to chain to more enemies, but it does considerable less damage, from the hits themselves, right? So now next that we've kind of gone over flat versus percent based and stuff like that, I want to go over local versus global. And again, I was laying in bed last night trying to think of the best way to explain this, right? And local is going to be specific to the weapon, right? So anything that requires an attack will use your local. Anything that uses a spell will not use local damage from an attack. And so the best way, and maybe this is silly, but the best way I could think of it is, right, if let's say you give me a Harry Potter wand. I don't know fucking magic, right? So, but if I bonk you with the wand, it's going to do physical damage. I'm physically attacking you with the wand. It's going to physically hit you, right? Now, if I light that on fire and I hit you with it, right? I'm still attacking you. I don't know magic. There's no spells, right? I light it on fire and I bonk you. You're going to feel the physical hit of it, and then it's also going to say burn you, right? And this isn't exactly, but I was trying to think of an analogy. But so it'll do physical damage and it will do fire damage, right? So on something like this right here, right, where we have a ton of, elemental damage, those will only apply to attack. So when you see adds, X amount of fire damage, cold damage, that is local to this weapon. If you see the the fourth line down where it says elemental damage, you see all those damage types we have up there. Those will not apply to spells. They only apply to attack, something that you are physically using to attack an enemy with, right? If it's a spell, then it will only most spell skill gems have their flat damage on them and their crit chance and all that kind of stuff on them. So that's where you're going to start getting your damage from, is the gem itself, right, on a spell. So let's see if we go over to my other build here. That is spell based, because this, obviously the bow build is attack based. But if we come over to a spell based build, which we're on something that's called, it's Blade Vortex, right? So we have, where are you? So Blade Vortex here. As you can see, we have deals if it's kind of midway down there. I know there's a lot on this one, but deals 407 to 610 physical damage, right? Which is quite a lot. And so this one, and it also, if you look kind of down here, a few lines from the top, it has its own critical strike chance. So none of that, is coming from the weapon itself, right? It is coming from the spell, because again, Harry Potter, if his wand is on fire, but he's casting spells, again, and I don't know the Harry Potter lore, so maybe I'm wildly inaccurate about this. I'm sure you guys will light me up. But if his wand is on fire, or he drops it in the snow and it's frozen, and then he comes out and casts a spell, the fact that it's been in the snow and it's frozen is not going to affect the spell itself, right? Like the spell that he's casting is the spell, and that just is what it is. It's not going to be like imbued with cold or whatever, or fire if it's fucking, lit like a cigarette, right? Like, so that's something to think about, and that's actually something that took me a while to understand. And maybe this isn't the best way to explain it, but in my head, that kind of made sense, and it kind of made me chuckle. So that's what we went with, right? But so keep that in mind when you're crafting your stuff, right? And again, so for here, we're actually using a bow for this spell, right? But there is no flat damage on it. There is absolutely no flat damage on it. Everything is, percent based, or socket, +1 to socketed gems, or, et cetera, et cetera. The reason being is because something like Blade Vortex, and this is a little more advanced, something like this will scale very heavily off of gem levels, right? So we use something like this where it's like +3 to all Blade Vortex gems, right? So if we take this out and you look at it here, now that it has no gems, it's just a level 20, it deals 140 to 211 physical damage, right? We put it back in, which takes it to a gem level 30. It does 407 to 610. So it grows exponentially by going up to gem level 30, right? So physical gems, chaos gems, they often scale very, very heavily. The flat damage itself scales very heavily off of gem levels themselves, right? So that's something to keep an eye on and something to be aware of, right? Attacks and spells are different. Having local damage on your weapon doesn't benefit you at all for spells, right? It benefits you for attacks. Okay, and as you see here, we have the flat and the physical. These are both local. You have to look for something that provides you something like this, right? So this is a good example here. So this one adds lightning damage, right? 10 to 162 lightning damage, and adds 43 to 93 cold damage to spells, right? And then the top one, you have lightning damage to spells and attacks, right? So the top line, lightning damage to spells and attacks, that would there are wand attacks, right? Like there are wand attacks in the game. That top line, the implicit, adds lightning damage to spells and attacks, would apply to either spells or attacks. So you need to keep an eye on what it says specifically, right? The second line down adds 110 to 162 lightning damage. That is flat for attacks. You can see it up there on the third line down, 10 to 162. That would not apply to spells. It would only apply if you were attacking with the wand, right? Physically attacking. And again, there are tags on the gems that show you, okay, this is the second line right under Mirage Archer, bow, attack, support, duration. These are the tags now that okay, this needs to be used with an attack gem, okay? Tornado shot is an attack, it's a projectile, it's a bow skill, right? So you need all of those things to make it work. And then if we look in something like, let's see what we have here. Ethereal Knives of the Massacre, right? So if you look at the top line there, it says it's a spell, projectile, and it's physical, right? So it's going to scale off of physical. It is a spell. So anything that benefits attacks are not going to benefit this gem, and anything that affects spells is not going to affect Tornado Shot, right? Or Caustic Arrow of Poison, right? These are attack gems. So that's just how that works, right? And then again, you have cold damage to spells, so that would apply to spells. Okay, and then anything that is not on the weapon, any sorts of damage, so here's on the gloves. This one, again, it specifically says adds 11 to 23 cold damage to attacks, right? So that's, again, it is not local, but it is only going to apply to attacks. It tells us that it's only going to apply to attacks, right? If you go to your bench or, your unveiling or something like that, you can come in here and it's not available, but let's say something like this, these crafts right here, adds 10 to 12 to 14 to 16 fire damage, cold damage, etc. These are not local, but these will apply because they are not on the weapon. We would craft them on the quiver. These are considered global and would apply to spells or attacks, right? So it's just, you got to really keep an eye out for the different types of lines and things like that and what they say. And be aware of, are you using a spell? Are you using an attack, right? So now the last thing I kind of wanted to go over that really I did the poison caustic arrow. that everyone was kind of concerned because I had elemental damage on my bow, and I kind of wanted to explain how that works and conversion, right? So the last thing I kind of want to just touch on is if you're converting damage, right? Like if you're going fizz to cold or cold to fire or lightning to cold or all damage to chaos or whatever the case is, there is an order. And as you can see, so damage conversion only flows in one direction between types. So in this case, we'll do left to right, right? And can never go in reverse. So as you can see, it starts with physical. So that's why you see a lot of builds converting, fizz to cold or fizz to fire or whatever, because it starts with physical and then can convert left to right. So physical can convert to lightning, which can convert to cold, which can convert to fire, which convert to chaos, right? So that's the order left to right. Chaos can never convert to cold. Or chaos can never convert to lightning. Fire cannot convert to physical. Fire cannot convert to lightning, etc. Right? So we always go left to right. And that's why, for instance, we were using this build early on, and I was getting a lot of questions of why I had my bow looked real similar to this one, right? All this flat damage, elemental damage, because we were using something, this tincture, right? In that very first line right there, you can see all damage can poison, right? So that means that any type of damage, where typically only physical and chaos damage will increase the damage of the poison, right? So in this particular case, with something like this, all damage can poison, and there is an ascendancy too with the witch, I believe, that can also, all damage can ignite or whatever the case is, right? So what that means is that all damage types, whether it be physical, fire, cold, lightning, those flat damages and increases to those damages will then dictate how powerful the poison is. The poison itself will still be chaos damage, right? It'll still be chaos damage over time, but the actual damage of the poison itself will be dictated by damage from other types, right? So you can stack as much damage as you want, whether it be physical or elemental or whatever, or even more chaos damage, and then that will dictate how powerful it is, right? But at the end of the day, the poison itself is still going to be physical damage over time. Okay? So again, that's a little more maybe advanced if you're trying to do this, but this is kind of what made me think of this video, was I was having a lot of questions about how it was working and damage and how to increase the damage and stuff like that. And so this is all, again, this is a very quick overview. You can go in depth, and then you start having more things that you can start doing, like, for instance, this one where your attack damage penetrates elemental resistances. Or, hits have a 25% chance to treat monster elemental resistances inverted. And these are damage increases, but these are a little different and a little more advanced. And I just kind of wanted to give those of you guys that were wondering, a general idea of how to increase your damage, what to keep an eye on. And at the end of the day, you want all of them, right? You want flat, you want increased, and you want more. You want to get it, and again, it all starts with flat, right? Early on, that's why one of the reasons why Chaos Gems scale so easy early league is because, or Chaos builds, because a lot of Chaos builds have damage built into the gem, and there's a lot of increased damage on the tree. So all you really have to do is level, to get a chaos build going early. That's why you see a lot of, like, poison blade vortexes and things like that league starting, because chaos damage comes online really easily because there's a lot of chaos damage, and you're not needing a bow like this or a big physical bow or something like that to really get your build feeling good. So I hope this was helpful. I don't want to be too crazy. If you guys have questions, I'm going to be streaming all day. By all means, pop in, post in the comments, let me know, like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. You guys have been crazy lately. The stream's been growing, like super nutty. I've been having a blast hanging out. So really appreciate you guys, and hopefully this is helpful. And again, if I'm wrong about any of this kind of stuff, just let me know in the comments. I'm sure you'll blow me up and let me know and all that kind of stuff. But just let me know. I mean, again, if you're going to help me get better, I appreciate that just the same as I'm sure you appreciate me trying to help you get better, right? So this game it's just, you need a wealth of knowledge to really excel in this game, and if we can all share that with each other, it just makes life a lot easier. So I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you guys a lot, and yeah, come check out the stream, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.